we want to go ahead and just jump right in, right? When you sing this particular topic, everyone has something that they may be, dealing with right now in their life, transitioning or thoughts of, what you're currently doing, or maybe thinking about some future plans. So when you think about navigating career changes, what is the first thoughts to come to you?
Adrian.
You gonna let Adrian go first?
Adrian, is she frozen?
You want me
Is
to go
she
first?
from?
I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh
Um. Uh-oh. Am I frozen?
no,
You're
I
you're
hope
good.
good.
not.
You're good now. You're good.
Can you hear me? I hope you all can.
Yes,
Okay.
we
Great.
can hear you.
It's so funny because when I first got the topic, I was saying to myself, there's no navigating in my career field. And then I really started to think about it and I was like, wait a minute, in this current climate, there's a whole lot of navigating we have to do, right? Obviously, a lot of things in the government are shooken up. And even when you're in the private sector, I'm in corporate, it still affects us, right? Because I'm in banking and banking is regulated by the government. And there's a lot of governmental entities that are affecting banking right now. And currently there's a bullseye on the FDIC and the NCUA. So I really thought about that question. And I'm like, you know, the mindset of old can't be right. And so I really started to kind of turn about it and was like, you have to really think about, do you still love what you do? Is there something in your personal life that is affecting what you're doing and that you might need to shift? Have you lost passion for it? So I think those are some of the things that are definitely changing or making me think about how I'm currently navigating the current you know uh, space
Right.
of where we are in our career. I guess you could say that.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I saw navigating career change, I mean, it was like this is my life right now. And currently I'm just retired March 31st, and I've thought about this for a very long time, but not just the transition of everything that's going on in the world and retiring, because of course I was just happy as I could be, but then there still is a transition. And I'm discovering along the way that there's some transitions I didn't think about, especially when you're somebody who's moving fast paced all the time on your job. You got a lot going on, and then you're now retired. So what do you do with that energy? How do you navigate into what I also have is on businesses? So being an entrepreneur and having a career, and now transitioning into just entrepreneurship and still trying not to be busybody. This was huge for me because I was like, I want to be in this conversation because I'm still trying to figure it out. And I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, what do I do with all this energy or lack of? I'm just saying. But what do I do with all of this now that I have to do a new schedule? Move my time around and not do some of the things that I did before that made things stressful. So it's like a combination of things. So I'm excited about this conversation for sure.
Yeah, I mean everything you guys said, we're going to touch on, during this topic. The how am I still passionate about what I'm doing? How do I transition if I want to transition in entrepreneurship? Even the thoughts about transitioning from working full time to retirement. So those are all the topics that we're going to. And I know that they're not just on our mind, but they're on a lot of people's minds, right? And so I'm so glad that we are having this conversation because I think it's important for us to think into some of these things that we have to think into. So we're going to go ahead and put the first question up, if you don't mind. And so this first question, what are some of the common reasons women find themselves considering a career change, especially in today's economic climate?
Well, for me, because I have been thinking about retiring anyway for a while, one of my main concerns became the how do I say this? I felt like that my work environment was becoming very toxic, and my health became a very important part of what was on my mind. And I was considering, even if it's something that I love, am I giving too much to this? How am I moving? Am I neglecting my health? Am I, working long hours? Because I'll tend to stay in, all day, all night. And although I love it, it was like, is this healthy for me? So for me, one of the main concerns was, is this a healthy place for me to be? so that when it is time to transition, I'm not releasing all of that stress, and now I'm not feeling well afterwards, because you tend to, when you're in it, you're moving, but then as soon as you let it go, your body relaxes, and the next thing you know, you're not well because you've held all that stress. So for me, it was health. Was this benefiting me health wise? That was one of my major concerns as I started to think about it.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I literally just had a corporate event for, I think they proposed retirement plans for a couple people, and they 25. They were let's see, they proposed to 25 people, 21 of them took it. So they had a big party, and a lot of people came back to our corporate location. And I got an opportunity to have this conversation with this very question. It was so funny. A lot of my counterparts in my area in career field started talking about, those two twins. It's us ladies, right? Perry and Minna. So a lot of times, well, a lot of conversations I had were about focus and drive and sleeplessness and things like that are happening to our bodies that are kind of stifling our trajectory into directorship and managerialship and all that stuff. And a lot of people took step backwards. They went to go back to just being on teams and not being leads because they're really physically going through it. And I think, just my opinion, just since the COVID epidemic and how our lives have changed a lot of things that are happening in our career fields are directly being affected, with us physically because we're now working at home, we're not getting as much sun, all the other things. So that was just something that I thought was really, really good to hear from some of my counterparts, especially because I just turned 45 myself, right? And I'm like, yeah, I've experienced the brain fog. Yeah, I'm having sleeplessness. And they're like, yeah, I can't continue to lead and do all the challenges. I needed to kind of step back. So I thought that was something that was really interesting. And even in the economic climate that we're currently in, it seems like even taking those step back, they're trying to tighten the belt a little bit more because they understand that that career trajectory that they had prior is no longer going to be there, and they had to make changes in other areas of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was thinking, so some of the thoughts, that I think that common reasons, where there's considering, career change. Some can be, you know, outside of our control. It could be layoffs. It can be, the workplace culture is within our control, but it can be the environment that we're in also, and also the the, like you mentioned, the personal circumstances that we have in these particular while we're making these decisions as well. So those are some of the things that I thought about as well. The things that happen when we don't have a say in the climate and how that could affect us as well. So that was one of the thoughts that I had as I began to think about this particular question. And I know, Dr. Lisa, when we talked, when you began to talk, when you were sharing with the changes that were going on with the Department of Education, where you worked for several years, you know, uh, helping the people navigate who were experiencing the layoffs. Can you share a little bit about how that for you, people you knew, and how that you know made
Affected.
you feel affected? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part of it, because it's not just you in these moments, especially the time we're in now. And
Yeah.
it was hard for me to focus on me because there are other people in this situation. And when our whole team was dismantled and ripped, there was many emotional changes. I mean, everybody had a different situation. People were worried about how they were going to pay their house note, if they were going to find another job, because you're talking about people who have been working for 25 years, and now you're supposed to go into a whole nother job where they're trying to retire. So now what do I do? And you're in this bubble of you can't do certain things because you're still partly connected, and you have to go through all of these legal things or whatever. So emotionally, people were having anxiety attacks. That their stress levels were up, and they just needed somebody to talk to. And you're trying to manage that while you're trying to figure out where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And I did kind of, if this makes any sense, I did kind of experience a feeling of guilt. And it was because I knew my status with trying to retire. So my situation was a little different. Not that it's still a lot, but I tend to, minimize mine to go to others. And I was like, well, I think I'll be okay. This is a lot, but I'm thinking about someone else who, maybe doesn't know what to do. They just got in the government 2 years ago and now they're ripped. What do they do? Somebody might have had a baby and they're trying to navigate. It's a whole lot of circumstances that we ran across, because you never know, as we say, you never know what's going on in people's lives until something like this happens. And then everything gets poured on the table. And you tend to carry that because we're all trying to figure out how we can help one another. And that was stressful, to say the least. It was, I can't even put into words, at least when we talked about it, it was like every day imagine that every day you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You just don't know what's going to happen. That kind of stress is really, it's awful. That's the only word I could say. So trying to navigate in the midst of trying to figure out what they're getting ready to do to you, what's going to happen. You can't even make decisions. Like you said, Lisa, you don't know what decision you can make because you have limited information about what's about to happen. So it's a lot to juggle at one time. Nobody should be asked to do what people have been asked to do.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand it. And that's, I think, for me, that's so important, just listening to you. I think being there, being a supportive ear for someone. And we're going to go into a lot of these other, resolutions and solutions that we can have as well to help each other in some of those, when some of those things come up, because, because of the climate that we're currently in. But I don't think it should be our primary focus. And I think that sometimes when we're in that state of distress, right? Because trust me, my entire career is dependent on a healthy economic. Okay.
right.
So there's times when my business runs slow as well. Yet there are some things that we can do to help each other navigate through some of the changes that we're experiencing. And I just want to go ahead right now. I don't know, Miss Adrian, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I was just very interested to hear a little bit more about some of the conversations that Lisa was able to kind of have when it came to encouraging some of her colleagues, experiencing, everything that's going on with the government.
Well, we're going to talk some more about it because we have some more questions, and we're going to talk some more about some of those, navigating some of those waters, so that we can there are some solutions and maybe some helpful tips that we can help each other with, and everyone who's listening. So we do appreciate our audience. Make sure you have any questions, you put them in the chat, and we want to make sure that if you have something you want to share that will add value to this conversation, we want to hear it as well, okay? But now I want us to go to the next question. And I think we kind of touched on it a little bit already. I just want to unpack it a little bit as well, right? So this is us making sure that we are mindful of the environment that we're in, okay? So then how do you identify when it's time for a career transition? What signs should you look for?
I was laughing because one of the first signs, and this is funny and not funny, but one of the first signs is when you have to get up in the morning and you just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. And I know we have those moments, periodically you have those moments, but when it's very consistent and you feel like, because even with my job working for the Department of Education, absolutely, I love the fact that I was helping students to be able to further their education, help them to resolve, their issues with their student loans and things. But I came to a moment where I felt like I wasn't able, and I think Nick D mentioned that, I wasn't able to give my all because of everything that was going on. So that became a difficult transition for me, because I was like, I want to be able to give my all. I want to be able to be excited about what I'm doing, and I want to get up in the morning and want to do it. So the signs for me was when I was hesitant about oh, I got to do this again. Because when it becomes more, I don't know, when you're just in the routine of it, that's
Mm-hmm.
a sign for me when I'm not getting up intentionally to do what I'm doing. I really don't want to do this anymore. Not because I don't want to help, but because it's now I'm feeling forced to do
Okay.
something. So
Mm.
that was kind of a moment for me.
Okay.
For me, I think it would be very similar to what you said. I just feel like when you don't have a passion anymore, or you have a love or drive for what it is that you do, that it was definitely time for a career change. For me, when I transitioned from a compliance role to a lending administration role, I loved helping the members, but I was just kind of in a space where I just didn't really want to deal with any more bad news, right? So I help deceased families kind of navigate their loved ones' accounts and things. And I just was like, I was dealing with my own grief and trying to pack it away and deal with grief on the job. And I just felt like it was just a cloud around me all the time. And so at that point, I was like, I got to do something else. It's not that I don't love helping them, but it was almost like the emotions and the situation was kind of weighing me more than it really should. And wasn't able to kind of quickly transition from one customer to another customer to another customer as I usually do. I would carry it and talk about, whatever pricked my heart with one situation for days and sometimes weeks on at a time. I knew at that point that it was something that I needed to make a transition into. So I
That
think I'm sure.
I think that is so important to be out aware and identify these markers, right? We have to identify the markers. Um, and one, a few of the markers that I thought about were the emotional aspect of it, the physical, and then the financial. So when you identify that there's that you need to transition, is this meeting my financial goals and needs
That
that I
part.
have? And the physical aspect, where mental, like Miss Adrian is talking about, and the health aspects, the emotional aspects of it, because when if we're in service, like each of us are, then we're going to get we have to be counselors sometimes, so we got to wear dual roles, dual hats. So in every aspect of our jobs, we have to interact with people. So I think identifying when something is um, I think this also gives us an opportunity to say, for some mentorship, right? How can I navigate these things when they come up, right? Some professional development, that may hopefully be offered in some of the companies that you guys are, in finance and education as well. And I'm in real estate. And so I think that these give us an opportunity to help us to navigate through, because sometimes these are some of the skills that we need help in understanding and managing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that identifying when there's a time for transition is important, but how we are dealing with it while we're still in it is also important. How do we navigate that? How do we, what resources are available for us so that we can navigate it, and it doesn't become overwhelming for us in the process of doing the job that we enjoy doing. And so those are some of the other thoughts that come to mind. Any other comments on this particular question?
Well, and I was just going to add, one of the things that I started to do is I mean, I was with Department of Education for 30 years, but in my last 10 years, I started to think about what was really more important to me,
Okay.
um, and be able to balance that with home. I think initially you go in and you're just doing the job, so everything else works around your job. And as I got older, I started to realize that it also matters how I'm feeling. And I'm really big on morale in an office. I think Nodella mentioned it too, but morale has always been huge for me. And when I see that there's a breakdown, I know how it will affect me. So that's the first thing that I want to do is to get the morale back up. And you have to find a balance because some people, especially like these times, people are going through a lot. And so they don't want to laugh. They don't, nothing's funny right now. But at the same time, you're trying to keep everybody's spirits lifted and let them know that, hey, this too shall pass. But it's hard to say that to somebody who's up against a situation where they don't know how they're going to live from day to day. So um, I try to make decisions, even in my career, um, on whether I did want to take a position. Because we tend to just want to keep moving up, keep moving. And there came a time when I didn't want to I didn't necessarily want to go up. I wanted to figure out, okay, where is my money? Where is my mental? And then make those decisions accordingly. And so sometimes I turn down positions that might have brought in more money, but it just wasn't worth my mental. And those are hard decisions to make, but I had grown to a space where those are the hard decisions I had to make. Do I just take the next step up? Do I want that supervisory position, or what does that entail? And does my life allow me to be the supervisor? Do I want to be the special one that comes in when nobody else comes in? Maybe not. You know what I'm saying? And are those few dollars worth it? So I think those are some of the things that we have to identify what's really important to us when we transition, because it's not always up. Sometimes it's over. So we got to make some of those hard decisions too.
Miss Adrian, I'm just going to ask that we're not talking to go ahead and mute the mic. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback. So, but Miss Adrian, did you want to add to that? And there's a few comments I wanted to bring up as well.
Well, I did notice in the comments that Nodella was talking about how if it didn't kind of inspire her anymore, and I think that was a really good point. I did see that and just thought to add that too. Inspiration, even though it can be temporary sometimes that's just the spark that you need to keep going, and or you realize that it's time for a change. So I feel like you can kind of come to the fork in the road when it comes to that as well.
Do you mind bringing up the comment, Nick D's comment, and after that, then Miss Nodella's comment?
Adrian, you triggered me with the fork in the road. Please don't. I'm just kidding.
Nick D said, we are doing a disservice to others if we can no longer give them the best of us. That, to me, is selfish behavior. So did anyone want to comment on that? And I think that, I think that you're right. I had a friend say to me, my cousin was like, well, I was having such a bad day, and I don't think I had a bad day like that. And she said, I just had to take a mental day. Sometimes when you need to know when it's time for you to, take a break, because taking on everything can weigh us down. And so that's one of the things that I thought about with this comment right here.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of my thought process when I can't give my best, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to others. And I think that's when you have to kind of, stand up and say, okay, it's time for me to back off and give somebody else an opportunity to stand in the front while you come back and get yourself together. Because I do feel like it's kind of selfish to just stay there anyway. It's like staying in a position that that you've outgrown, and there are people that are waiting to grow into those spaces too, and you just hold on to it just because. So I agree.
I agree with that statement as well. I was going to say that recently we took one of our personal development classes, talked about customer service. And even though I don't work directly with the public, a part of my department does. And one jewel that I took away from that class was that in real life, we actually are always rating public customer service for our everyday lives, whether we're going to restaurants, whether we're going to handling business over the phone, all that stuff, right? And so we know we'll say stuff like, I'm not coming back here, or I don't know what in the world wrong with her today. She needs to start over, all the things that we've said to ourselves, right? And it really got me to thinking that, like, if I can make that judgment so comfortably when I'm taking care of business in the world and I want to be treated well, I have to be very mindful as well that if I am in a position where I am also giving that type of service to another individual, that I am also doing the things. I should be rating myself just as equally, if not even a little bit more harsher, than what I'm doing that to others. And I think that that's such a key part of being a disservice or having selfish behavior when you're interacting with other people.
I think that's good, a good point, Adrian, that we check in, we make sure that we considering, treat others as we want to be treated, right? And then I think it's so important as well that we keep service top of mind, because everything we do is a reflection on our character, our morals. Those are they're reflective on us. So it's important that we always do those check-ins and not allow what's going on with us to bleed over into other people. So I think that's really important that we do that. You know, the self-examination is important in this particular aspect, and what Nick D was sharing. And I think it is a disservice, but sometimes we're not mindful because our focus is self sometimes. So that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're doing that. There's another comment that you were going to bring up. Okay. From Miss Nodella. For me, it's when the drama increases and I'm losing my desire and drive, lacking interest in the job, but not the role itself. That's good. I know, I'm sure each of us have experienced that. I'm sure each of us, yeah,
Yeah,
experienced that.
and that, the thing about what Nodella's talking about is it's hard to navigate that sometimes, because that can happen in 30 years. I can't imagine how many times I was in that space. Because you get new people coming to the office, the dynamic changes, people get different roles, the dynamic changes. So you're always readjusting, which is why what Adrian was talking about earlier is so important to be able to step back, because you do have to reset over and over again. And I think some people have to remind themselves that we're not robots, we're human, and we're not going to get it right all the time. And so we also have to give each other grace. I know I have been that person, Adrian, that goes into a place and the service is just awful, but I have to also check myself and make sure that what space am I in? Why am I receiving it this way? And then sometimes we have to be quiet, and you don't have to share all of that with everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if that's what it is, we don't always have to broadcast it in that moment. Maybe they're having a bad day. So we also have to give each other grace in that moment. But I absolutely agree, when the drama increases, then I have to do kind of a check analysis on, okay, what's going on here? Is there somebody has an issue with me, or is it the office in whole? Where can I improve on what I'm doing? Or is this where I want to be, because this is just too much for me? So I agree that once the drama increases, you have to reset and figure out what's going on, because I don't want to sit in this, because you do take that stuff in. If you sit in it all day, every day, it will consume you.
For me, I think one of this, when I think about this particular statement, it makes me think about when I was transitioning before I opened up my company. It's like I had this ideal of a culture environment that I wanted to be in, right? And I was going from place to place to place trying to find it, but it was something that I had to create. It wasn't anything that I was going to be able to see and I mean to just walk into, right? And so when you talk about being in an environment where there's drama, there's confusion, this is what this made me think about, because you can, if you're so inundated with confusion and drama, then there's a time when you can say, okay, we got to come to the table, because this is where we spend a lot of our time, right? We have to sit down and we have to have a conversation so that we can create this healthier environment. We don't want an environment where we're coming into and dreading it, like we talked about, waking up and coming into these environments where it's not healthy for our mental. So we have to make sure that when those times come up, even if we're not in a position where we a supervisory or a management position, we still can address these issues when they come up in the environments that we're working in. So if this is something that anyone is dealing with, and you feel like this may be an indication that you may need to change, or if you've gone to your supervisor or management and nothing is changing, then to me, that's an indication that you don't care about this product that we are representing. And I think so then you have to make some decisions from there, I think.
Well, and I wanted to bring in, I'm glad you were mentioning that, because what I thought about is the other scenario, which is kind of what we're currently in, where the drama is there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that anybody can do about it right now.
Yeah.
It literally was our everyday existence, was waiting for that next email that's going to ask us to do something. Or, I mean, and literally people were on edge the whole time they were at work, which is an awful way to work. And it was nothing could have changed that except internally how you're going to manage this for yourself. And that's where people, I think, don't work. A lot of people don't work like that. They go to work, they do what is expected of them, and they move on, but they're not thinking about how am I feeling about this. But right now, the climate that we're in, if you don't try to manage yourself in these times, you will get lost and the anxiety will kick in to where you can't handle it. So I think really it's really important to understand that there are times where no one can actually control the drama, because literally every day, the people who I know still are working there, they're in this every day. And the atmosphere is anger, hostility, and some of it has nothing to do with the person next to you. It's just the fact that I am here. So you got this mixture of people who feel like I lost my job, so they got their job. And then you have people who got the job, but they're so stressed that they feel the same way. So yeah, it really is an internal thing that I think people need to start to tap into, because otherwise it can really do some serious damage. Serious damage to people. I think a lot of people going through what we're experiencing now are going to have some long-term effects from what's going on, unfortunately.
Yeah. I agree. Go ahead, Miss.
I was just going to say, when I was looking at the comment from Miss Nodella, I was thinking to myself, like, a preponderance of people went home after COVID. I know a lot of people had to return to the work, but for a good bit of us, some of us still work from home. So you thought, at least I thought, no more water cooler conversation, no more drama. That has definitely taken a deep change since, our current economic status, where I'm even noticing that my directors and things like that are so concerned about what is going on in our current environment that they're firing off emails and articles. And it's starting to become a little bit of a distraction because their fears are now seeping into my everyday communication while I am trying to be super focused on just the job, right? Because those are the things we can't control. But I was thinking about the transition of what are considered to be a typical or traditional office drama, water cooler talk, whatever you want to call it, whoever got sent home, whoever was late, to now it's like everything in the world now is even when you're working and you're trying not to be distracted, it is completely coming at you from every standpoint of what it is that you do, even if you're not directly affected. So that comment just made me really think about how that transition has happened.
Thank you so much. I'm going to add one more comment. Is the screen look large to you guys, or is it just me? That just me?
I think it might be just you, Lisa.
Okay. All right. All right. Because
I didn't say it like that. I was like, yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Because my screen just like went up. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing to make that happen. So if you can add the Empowering Perspectives comment that I just, okay, it says, unpopular opinion. Which is more right? Me seeking appreciation or me appreciating? That's the first part, I would think. Some of the mental struggles we encounter are self-induced. Expecting praise of any sort is a receipt for emotional imbalance. This is not a holistic statement that applies to everyone. So go to the first part again. The first part of your statement. So which is more right? Seeking appreciation or me appreciating? In the environment. Okay.
Me appreciating would be my response to that. But I will say that I think that it's probably easier said than done.
Okay. Miss Adrian?
I would say definitely me appreciating. I'm just not it's gonna sound strange, but I'm kind of a girl that doesn't like to be centered by anyone else, unless I want to center myself, and that's rare. So for me, it's definitely appreciating, and I prefer to kind of hang to the background, especially in my professional environment.
So do you think we did some of these things that we experience are self-induced? Do you think they are? And if so, how? I mean, how? How can we identify that they're self-induced?
I think that a lot, I want to say, I don't know what the level of it is, but I do
Mhm.
think that it's definitely self-induced, because if you're talking about somebody who, you're combining home life with work life. And if you're unhealed, or you got a lot of stuff going on at home, and
Mhm.
this is your place of relief, and now this has become home, um, then you're bringing whatever you got going on over here, you're bringing it over here. If you tend to be very sensitive about certain things, you're bringing that into the job. So when people are just handling business, you're extra sensitive about it. So you're feeling like everyone's against you, when really that's not what's happening. So I definitely feel like that some of it can be self-induced. Um, and I think that it's a hard balance at times for people to, because I say me appreciating, but to be honest with you, I think that there are times when people work so hard and they just want a little appreciation for everything that they're doing. But then they become consumed with that. So you walk around angry because you feel unappreciated, but at the same time, it's like you lose focus on the fact that this is not all about you. And how can we be appreciative of what we do have? So I think it's a matter of kind of thinking about, I'm gonna share something funny with you real quick. So I'm working on how to set up a schedule now that I'm transitioning. And I was going through my coaching with Coach Sean, and she what we tend to do is focus on what we don't want to do. And I did that. So I said, well, I have the first thing on my schedule that I know I'm going to do now that I'm retired. When it's raining and dreary outside, I am going to do nothing. And she just busted out laughing. And she said, well, okay, I hear that, but let's not focus on what you're not going to do when it's raining outside, and let's focus on what you are going to do. So I think that if we change the way we're thinking, then we can fix that self-induced thing that Empowering Perspective is talking about. Because I do think that sometimes we just put it on ourselves, and we got some work to do, self-work. But I think a lot of people don't tap into it until there's some kind of tragedy, and now you're kind of focused on you. So I mean, I think this is a great perspective. I love the question, because it's something that people need to think about. I just
Yeah.
don't think that most do.
And that's it, and that's why I love these discussions, right? Because that's some of the self checks that we have to do with ourselves, right? Am I expecting something for someone else?
Yeah,
Do I have an expectation that you should do this for me, right? Expecting praise of any sort is a receipt, because you're setting yourself up,
that's
because
true.
you may not get what you want, right, in these environments. And so I think Nick D just said this is we have to realize that people hire us to do a job, right? That's it. Nowhere in the PD, I don't know what you mean by PD, does it say
Oh,
okay,
it's
okay, okay,
your performance description.
okay, we will give you praise for, okay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Easier said than done, I know, but that is the reality. So we have to be mindful. We come in there, we're doing a job. This is a job, right? But our work is what's going to make the difference in our lives.
Position description. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I think that's important as well. When we have this expectation, we will set ourselves up for disappointment. So I think those are good comments. Thank you so much for the comments.
Yeah, that was great.
It just helps us to be mindful of our individual responsibility, right? What am I here for? And I think sometimes we get that's distorted, right? I'm here to do this, right? So for this, but when we go in and we do our work, there is a little distinction, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But thank you guys so much for your comments in the chat. I really do appreciate those comments, and they help us to get a better understanding, and also how we can begin to implement some of these maybe thought processes in our life as we're navigating, our careers as well. If we could put the next question up. Oh, okay. So this is what we're talking about, purpose, right? So what role does purpose play in making a career change? And how can women align their career with their personal passion? Or is it possible?
I think it's absolutely possible. This is a great question. In regards to knowing your purpose and aligning it, because I think that makes for easier for you to just do your job easier if it's aligned with what you do outside of the job. And I think you got to pick and choose where that is. It could be in your mental or your approach to people, or I mean, it could be some really basic things that you can align, even if your jobs are two different things. I just think that these are the reason I love these questions is because it's things that people don't tap into. They just go to work. And I do agree that people hire you for a job. But what's interesting in the balance is that you will be judged on your behavior on that job. So although they're asking you to do the job, I have experienced this many times in the government where I did my job and I was still judged on things that were outside of my job, whether it was I'm trying to off the break, I can't think of, but there were areas where although they say we just want you to do the job, I don't know that that's always true. It's the underlining things that sometimes get you caught up. I know in government it did, and you were thinking, what did I do? I just did my job. But it's relative depending on who your supervisor is, who likes you, who don't, who doesn't like you. All of those things really do still come into play because you'll notice that there is favoritism. They are appreciating somebody. Somebody's getting rewarded, somebody's getting a promotion. So all of that other stuff does play a role, even though they say all we want you to do is your job and you're good to go. And it's not true, but I think that, technically speaking, and we have to individually decide what that looks like for us because it's going to be different from somebody else. So, yeah, but I think that if you align just your attitude when you come in the door, that's something that can be aligned with your career and your personal passions. If you always have a pleasant attitude, if you're always, as Lisa mentioned before, that we look to serve. If you are looking to serve, that should be the alignment there. Whether it's a person, it's your career or it's a personal passion. Are you there to serve? Are you smiling? Are you coming with a good attitude? All of those are alignments that might not be specific to the duties, but if you walk in that, you should do good in both areas because you're consistent. So
when it comes to purpose, it's kind of funny because this particular thought I'm having is kind of piggybacking off of something that Coach said when it comes to expecting that praise. And so one of the things that I've always said to myself is I got to keep my mind in the huddle, right? I'm a big football fan. So if you keep your mind and you keep your focus in the huddle, which is that small group, right? Your core department or whatever it is that you're moving in, then you don't have to worry about what's going on the sideline. You don't have to worry about what's going on in the audience. You don't have to worry about looking for other people to validate what you have going on when you keep your mind in the huddle. For me personally, not only do I keep my mind in the huddle, I also have to keep my mind in the 6-way mirror dressing room, constantly self-checking, constantly self-checking, constantly self-checking. So when I find myself wandering with my brain into what someone else is going to think, what Lisa's going to think about my glasses, what the other Lisa's going to think about my earrings, then my mind is not in the huddle. I'm not thinking about the plan. I'm not thinking about the projection. I'm not thinking about how to get to the goal. So for me, that also ties into purpose, because once you stay in the huddle, once you stay focused on what it is that you are trying to do, you are going to be always, even if you're not on your purpose, you're working towards it. And keeping those distractions away help. Now, how is the question that I don't know. I think specifically aligning the career and the personal passions together. When I looked at that question, I was like, I ain't got nothing, but I am definitely open to hearing more and learning more tidbits of what you ladies have to say, and of course the chat.
If we could bring up what Miss Nick D, the one I just highlighted. Yeah. So Nick D's comment in the chat says that it is possible. My focus did not shift to purpose until I restarted my walk with God. Once I embraced that, I realized my purpose is not truly being fulfilled in the career space I'm currently in. And so, I mean, that's good, because I think that when we begin to do some of that, reflecting and evaluation, I know that it helps us to identify, right, that where we currently are. And it helps us to say, okay, so is this what I want to continue to do? And if so, how do I reframe this so that I can make sure that my purpose is never absent of what I am currently doing in this job, in this space as a job. And one of the things that I began to learn to do as well is to be mindful that my purpose, I know what it, I think I'm real clear on what it is as far as me identifying. I'm in real estate. I help people. I have to counsel people. People talk to me all the time, right? And I can help them navigate and begin to think about something other than what they have their current thought is, or to give them some insight that they may consider, right? But as Nick D, I begin to identify this purpose more and more as I begin to understand my relationship with God. Everything that I do is ministry. Everything. You may not know it, but that's what it is. Because I am being an example in the marketplace for everyone I work with. The character, the ethics, and sometimes it's not easy, right? Because you encounter people who don't necessarily think like you, but that should not change the way that you interact with them. You still have a responsibility to continue in that character now, or you can choose not to work with that person as well. So I think those are some of the things that help me to reflect on purpose in my current role as well, in what I do as my career. And that was very helpful for me. So I do appreciate that, because if we don't make sure the first relationship that we have is prominent in the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, then there is going to be some conflict. Because like you said, Dr. Lisa, they're not aligning. In everything that we do, everything that we find our hands to do, they should align. And we should do them if we're in a relationship, have a relationship with God as unto God, because that's serving other people. Any other comments to this statement that or question that we have up here?
I was just gonna I think I've experienced the same thing, Nick D, as I started to reconnect or discover, and enhance my relationship with God. I think my whole perspective changed on work, career, family, everything. And then it was almost like an automatic where you work to align it. So even if it didn't, now I'm working towards how am I going to align all of this so that I can make the proper decisions when it's time to move. And I think that's what contributed to my decisions on retiring. Some people stay because they're like, and some people looked at me like 30 years, that's all. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I have, this is aligning the way my life is going. And I had to make those kind of decisions. But I think as my relationship with God grew, I think that's what made me comfortable with the decisions I made. And I got confirmation along the way. So I think I agree with what the way she rolled it out is kind of the way my life rolled out. As I started to connect more, it just looked different. And I think that's going to happen. And my job was, okay, how am I going to align this completely? And I think that changed the whole perspective on the drama in the office. I didn't respond the same way. I wasn't as frantic. I wasn't worried, even though this is a scary situation. I was even surprised at myself. Like, why am I just not? Because back in the day, Lisa would have been off the chain. Like, what is going on? What are we going to do? And I didn't respond that way. And I do think that that's because of exactly what Nick D said, that I had, built my relationship with God in a way where my faith was intact. And, although there were concerns, it was like, okay, how are we going to get through this? Let's do it.
Yeah. I was looking at the scripture that Coach put in the chat, and I think it's something that we have to also be mindful of, right? That we do whatever we do, right? We do it because we want to serve the main person we're in relationship with, God. Everything that we do. So I appreciate him adding that particular scripture, Matthew 6:2-5 as well. I don't want to read it because I want to, but it is available for anyone who wants to go and read it and try to get an understanding. It's good for us, for me as a believer, all of us, we walk together on the same journey. So those are the things that we have to be mindful of to help us in even our everyday decision making as well, right? So, when I think about personal passion, and I think there was a comment in here about knowing who you are, I think that was by Jarvis. Thank you so much for joining. Where we talked about, reflecting on our job performance, right? She said, I think knowing who you are reflect your job performance. And so identity is something that we talk about so much in our community, right? Because a lot of people identify themselves with what they do and not who God is. And so I think that is so important, right? We can't identify ourselves as, doctor, teacher, lawyer, mother, wife, right? Because that's not our identity. Those are some of the things that that we do in our life, but that's not our identity. So I think that is another important aspect to understanding as we navigate our career. I think identity is a big issue. We want to talk about that a little bit more. One of our upcoming shows, we want to be able to talk about that as well, because that's a big issue I think that we see in our community today. Identity, tying ourselves to what we do versus who we're in relationship with. So thank you so much for that comment. And thank you so much, Empower Perspective, for that scripture. And we're going to go to our next questions. Okay. So this is, something that Dr. Lisa mentioned earlier when we began to talk on our intro, as far as entrepreneurship. So how can we effectively prepare for transition into entrepreneurship? Do you want to touch on that, anyone? I know I can say a lot about this.
Lisa, you go ahead and lead. This is a big question. Yeah.
Okay. It's important, if we're beginning to think about, I'm going to transition into entrepreneurship, we have to understand every aspect of it. We have to understand every aspect of it, because when I got into real estate, I didn't look at it as, me being an independent contractor and everything I have to pay for. Everything. There's not one thing that I don't have to pay for. Not one. So I think preparing financially is one of the biggest things. And understanding that if I'm transitioning into an entrepreneurship position where I'm going to be working for myself, which is great. I think we all should, be doing something for ourselves that can help us financially. And so I think that is one of the things that I had to learn in budgeting. So for me, when I make any income, I have to make sure that I have budgeted it very well. I had to make sure all of my expenses that I know and how many months is this income going to carry me. I had to be very, very strategic financially about everything that I'm doing. And it's not impossible, but no one ever taught me that. I learned that through trial and error. And so I think that's one of the most one for me, one of the most important things if you're transitioning to, understand financially. There's so many things you have to do. Marketing is the biggest aspect of being an entrepreneur. Someone needs to know what you're doing. What are you doing? How do I know that your services are available to me? So marketing is a big thing. If you can, when I get a marketer, someone who's going to market for my business, I'm gonna be like, because that's a big aspect of what I do. Every aspect, recruiting, marketing, accounting, all those things have to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about transitioning. So those are some of. I'll stop there and let you guys.
Well, and I was going to add to that time management. So for me, I really did have to figure out because we know to what the other question, Jai, I think it was saying that we have to know ourselves. So in me knowing who I am and that I will go into the office at 7:30 and stay until 10 o'clock at night, which is not a healthy thing to do, but you want to get that work done and you're focused. But there can be pluses and minuses to that. So with me transitioning to now being retired, I had to do some time. I shouldn't, because I haven't figured it all out, y'all. But time management is definitely a huge thing for me because your day is consumed. So mentally, I'm thinking I have 7:30 to 6 o'clock where I have a job to do. So I'm multitasking and doing things, excited about what's to happen after work, and then I pour right in. Well, now 7:30 to 6 is not occupied anymore. So how do I manage my time and not get comfortable in sitting still? Because sitting still was actually part of my problem because we're working from home. And I wouldn't leave to go to lunch or anything. I was just working. And the job actually, you needed to work like that. I really didn't find a lot of time to step away. And now I have all the time in the world and I got to figure out what to do with it. So that alignment that we talked about too with my relationship with God actually got me in a different perspective where I'm managing nap time. I'm managing time for Lisa. I'm managing time to spend with family, things that I didn't do in my career that I should have been doing. But now I have this moment in time where I'm like, okay, so what do I do to prepare so that I don't continue to move like I did in my career, which is nonstop. I don't want to do nonstop anymore. It's not healthy mentally, physically. None of that was good, but it got the job done. And now as an entrepreneur, because I was doing dual, now I'm just entrepreneur. So I got to think about how do I keep my energy up? How do I plan for? And that's why I have my suggestion in transitioning too is I got a coach who's coaching me through not just my personal things that make me do what I do, but also how to manage a day. And no, I don't have to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I do have to decide I'm going to spend 2 hours on this. And then it doesn't have to be consistent. I can step away, do some other things. It's kind of like even with me having the podcast, and I had to be reminded when you lock in, I'm one of those people who my commitment is to the podcast. So I'm on every time. And so I was also pushing through. So even days when I was exhausted, I was like, I got to do this though. I got to do this though. And I had to be reminded, that this is your show. So you can take a break. It's okay. So sometimes it's okay to sit still. So where some people move all the time, I struggled with being still. And that's going to be my biggest challenge with transitioning into entrepreneurship. Because I'm either all in or I'm all out. If you give me time to relax, I will embrace that quickly. But, and then it's hard for me to get back in the swing because I'm tired. But I think that's preparing is maybe getting a coach to help you kind of break that down. And then deciding what's really important going forward, because you have to be motivated in entrepreneurship. There's not a lot of downtime. You can't work with no energy. You can't work with no focus. You can do that sometimes on the job because you have a consistent thing you need to do. But in entrepreneurship, you got to be on. And so you got to be your best, which is why you got to break it up sometimes and do different things. So.
I definitely understand and appreciate the time blocking mechanism. I have the opposite problem. When you have no one that you are responsible for, you kind of just walk to the beat of your own drum. And at this ripe old age of 45, yes, I know I'm old. I'm claiming it. I'm saying, but I will say this: that I am now starting to understand how I've been very wasteful with time in very, very long periods of my life. And now I'm trying to get that back and get on track. And I'm using all the tools necessary to make sure that I'm optimizing the time of my day, not just focusing on the 9 to 5 hours that I have for work. And then I can kind of go, with the rest of my time, because of my personal situation. I'm learning that, being earlier in the morning and getting things done requires me to have allows me to have more time in the evenings to do things that I want to do for other parts of my life, whether it's getting cleaning done in the morning, and then I can, take longer walks in the evening, and just trying to maximize my time more that way, in a structured way. Also, praying. I mean, I really have gone and been praying to God about my gifts and the gifts that He's bestowed upon me. I've never, ever, believe it or not, and all of my life thought about being an entrepreneur. It just never crossed my mind, right? I knew people had done it, had been successful. Lisa's very successful in her business. I always applaud them, but I was just kind of like, yeah, that ain't for me. And now, through me having a closer walk with him, he is showing me that the gifts that I use temporarily throughout the year can allow me to transition into other things, and just trying to put your hands onto different gifts that you have to see if that's something that you feel like you can make passion. Because I believe the saying is, if you are operating in your passion, it doesn't really feel like work. If you're operating your gift, you really don't feel like work. So allowing myself to have that time to explore those things. I've always done makeup for prom season, right? But that's a season. Never thought about transitioning that, but that's a possibility. Or being a bariatric patient and joining a lot of the TikToks about, bariatric tools and tips and all this stuff. And I've really been learning a lot of that. And so kind of exploring that. So I think understanding what your gifts are, or exploring your gifts are, and really praying about that. And that time management thing has really opened the opportunity for my brain to think about doing something more than what I am supposed to do, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's transitioning to entrepreneurship is a total mindset shift, right? And it's important that we are mindful of um, how we transition. It's like you spent many years working for someone else, and you worked hard for someone else. So my mindset was, I worked hard, I was consistent, and I did what I needed to do on this job. Now I should work harder for me, because this is part of my legacy, my children. It's a part of my story. If I wrote a book, I could not leave this out. So it's a part of what I said I had to commit to. And I really do enjoy serving in helping people. Just the joy of someone getting a key, or a mom or a young family going into their home, and they've never thought that it was possible, but we have some tools that we can help you identify and understand that it is possible. Oh, time and time again, if it felt like it was so rewarding, and it wasn't something that I received, but it was because I was able to help a person navigate through it. So I think serving is such a big part of what I find joy in doing, and it's a blessing to be able to help someone navigate to something they thought never was, or for someone to say, I didn't think this was possible. I didn't know that I could do this. I think those are times where you can just, like, be so thankful to God that this is an opportunity and something you're doing that you truly enjoy doing. So I think there's so much that we have to consider when it comes to entrepreneurship. We have to make sure that we have a business plan. We have to make sure that we have a financial goal. And then when we started doing ours as a company, the company I used to work with, they would make sure that, and there were some workshops that I was doing for preparing for our next year, right? And they always made you put in your vacation time. That was one of the first things they made you put at the very top, right? So you're preparing for your time of relaxation. That's what they used to say to us. So I didn't, when I thought about it, I was like, okay, so you're preparing for, you're working, and then you're preparing. This is already a part of your plan. And I never, really thought about it. And then it began to make sense to me. So in everything that we do, we must prepare for it. If you're working for yourself, it's so important. The preparation is one of the most important things in dedicating yourself to working for yourself is important. So those are my thoughts on that particular question. And we're going to skip ahead. We got like about 20 more minutes left. Okay. So we're going to skip ahead to question number 7, because it's something that Dr. Lisa was talking about, right? What are some strategies for networking and building connections in a new career position, right? If you're transitioning to a new career, what are some of the connections we can do? What are some of the things that we can do as we are transitioning?
So I saw Nodella put in the chat, which was definitely something I was thinking about, and I've done to get a coach, and she said specifically a SME in that area where you're going. So definitely somebody who's where you are, where you trying to go. Get them to coach you through what you need to know and transition to. The other thing that I wanted to add to that is what I think was a plus for me, because like you, Adrienne, I never expected to be an entrepreneur, never thought about it. Love to serve people, and anything you ask me to do, I'm there. I would actually step into leadership roles accidentally, but I'm there to serve. And I never thought about starting my own business or anything like that. But when I did, because I think as you start to align, we talked about that alignment. I think that's when you tap into your gifts, and it's alignment. You start to notice what your gifts are, and then the idea of how I can be an entrepreneur and do, whether it's crafting or anything. I've crafted all my life. I never thought about a business with it. But as I started to build my relationship, then these thoughts came in about, oh, just do this, just teach yourself this and put it on Facebook. The marketing came in, put it on Facebook, and people are like, oh, can I have one? And then there you have it. You're now in this space that you never thought about. I think the plus was, and I would suggest this, if people are in a career, tap into some of those gifts while you're in the career. And I think that helped me with my transition into entrepreneurship, because I was there while I'm here, and I started to make those alignments because I was doing them both. Now I probably went too hard with it, and so I'm 100% here, 100% here, and that can wear you out. But what I'm discovering now is I learned a lot from entrepreneurship that helped me on my career, and I would have thought the opposite. But once you introduce that, because it's all about how you're going to build, this is you, this is your gift, this is how you're building it. I think that focus made me, okay, so how do I want to communicate with people? How do I want to this? And then I transitioned it into how I was working in my career, which was a little different. I mean, because you're listening to someone else, but I kind of handled it like the position that I hold with the Department of Education. I kind of handled it like an entrepreneur, like, this is my job, this is what I do, and this is how I'm going to manage this in your space. So I would suggest to people to maybe tap into a gift or two while you're in your career so that you can prepare for that transition. And then to just, like Nodella mentioned, take classes and seminars and go to events, listen to people who are talking about what they're doing. It will really trigger things. And I think you brought up prayer. I know that was one of the questions on there, and that's what prayer actually got me there too, like praying about, okay, what are these gifts that I'm supposed to be paying attention to? Because a lot of times you're trying to do everything. And I had to make adjustments. What do I need to let go of? What can I do? What can I? So all of those things, I think everything we've been talking about so far is been beautifully aligned. So I love the questions, because it really is a transition in your relationship with God that helps all of these things to kind of align themselves. But definitely find yourself a coach, check out a seminar, attend a conference. Those things will definitely help you to strategize on how to move as you transition.
I agree with that 100%, Lisa. For my trajectory, or how I see the outlook of networking is concerned, it's just breaking the mold of your mental box, right? So as we're growing our relationship with God, and we're starting to understand exactly the reason why we're supposed to be here, and our purpose and our calling. It's almost like it does align, right? He kind of transitions you to a point where he kind of lines you up to where you're starting to walk into spaces, and mentally I'm breaking out of the box. I'm no longer being just the Adrian, the girl that I know, the Mary Dean's daughter, all the things. I am truly a king's kid. And it gives me such that extra boost, and it allows my shoulders to kind of come back, my head to go up, and for me to walk into different spaces with confidence, so that I can have conversations about different areas and aspects of life that I never even thought about having before, like are brand new, that open the possibility of my mind to kind of start churning in different areas. And then, of course, once you get those ideas, you get those sparks, you bring them back before the Father in prayer. So that, for me, just a little bit of having the confidence to break outside the mental box is that one step, that, and kind of where I am on that journey. It's just having the opportunity to be able to move into those spaces with a lot more confidence, because even though I have found myself recently in spaces where we're talking tech, we're talking coding. I don't have a clue what none of that means, but I'm like, okay, Lord, you before me, because I don't know what this man talking about, and I have confidently nodded my head, Lisa, not knowing, but then finding myself coming back going, I don't understand why his shirt had O's and ones. And then I figure out about, textgrams and stuff, and I'm able to decode some of the stuff. And I'm like, oh, look at Google, my friend. But I really have truly just kind of, with my walk, been able to confidently walk into those spaces of places I would have been like, I'm not going there. I don't know nothing about what them people talking about. I ain't got no interest in that. And stop having such that I can't do attitude, more than with Christ, I can do anything. Anything is possible. And if I put myself and align myself in those spaces, that I can really kind of open up that inner dialogue within myself to say, is this an interest of me, God? Is this where you want me to go? Is this the reason why I'm in this space? And all those thoughts. So just being able to break outside of the box, trusting him, trusting yourself, knowing that he's in you, and walking forward has really been a positive thing.
That is so great. And everybody in the chat, I'm just loving the comments that they are making. Nodella, Miss Lisa mentioned her. Hiring a coach is imperative. Mentorship is imperative when you are transitioning, going to the workshops, learning more about the craft that you want to enter into. I know Nick D. I did cry a couple of times when I got a key. When I had to get when someone got the key at close. I did. I did. Now it just brings me so much joy. So I just love what everyone is stating in the chats. Thank you guys so much. Now I want to bring up. I started a comment that was in the chat from Empowering Perspectives. And I like this because one of the things that we are always taught, right? The world teaches work-life balance, which is counterintuitive to entrepreneurship, right? So one can conclude that the world teaching is focused on keeping you in a job market as opposed to obtaining something that can be generational. And so I think that is so true. And, I can tell you on this journey, like any other position or job that you're in, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm tired of this. This is getting on my nerves. right? But it's not because of something, but there's outside sources that have a say in how the businesses are run sometimes. So you have to remain focused, even in the midst of what may appear to be chaos. You have to remain focused on what you're doing, what your purpose is, because you will get distracted with all that other noise if you don't stay focused. And I actually said this the other day, that someone asked me, well, how's business going? I said, well, for me, I'm in the kingdom. I don't know what the world is doing. And that was my response. That was my immediate response, right? And so I think I have to continue to think on these things, right? I can't focus on what's going on, because if you do, that's where you're going to allow distraction to come in. And I have to continue to do my work and focus on the promises of God, not on what men are saying or what it looks like right now, because it seems like everything is being affected, everything in our life. But this is in the world. And so if I keep my mindset in the kingdom, then I'm going to have a different thought about the things that I'm saying, because I'm not focusing on what they're saying. I have to be mindful of what's going on, but that's not my focus. And so we have to be mindful of what we're being taught in these environments, as well as Empowering Perspective just mentioned. If you could bring that up one more time. I think I had started one other comment that was made. But I do appreciate you guys, bringing these comments and helping us to consider, because there are some things that we have to unlearn, right, in our career. Yeah, that was the other one. One of the biggest preparation hurdles in transitioning into entrepreneurship is understanding the difference between focus and balance. Um, any beginning entrepreneurship seeking balance will struggle immensely to achieve success. If you could just add a little bit more to that. But I think that's good. The focus and the balance, right? Because honestly, sometimes there's no balance. When I started in the beginning, I was here, just working until 10, 11 o'clock at night sometimes, because I'm learning, right? I'm trying to get myself into a place where I have a flow and I'm learning. And then my industry is governed by, the state that I live in, right? So there's laws that I have to adhere to. So I have to make sure that I'm doing the continuing education. I have to make sure that I'm staying abreast of the changes. And you have to do more, because in the beginning, it's not going to be a balance. It's going to be me understanding, and with all my getting, get an understanding, so I can make sure that I am effective in this role that I'm taking on as an entrepreneur. And I had the mindset that I have to do extra. I got to do more, because I own my own business. I had that thought that was spoken to us as we as we're younger. You have to do more, you have to work harder, you have to do this. And I took that on, and it kind of burnt me out, right? Mm-hmm. Because I said, I have to do more, I have to know more, I have to be better. But that wasn't what I just know. I needed to know my job, and I need to care about people. That was the most important thing that I learned in being an entrepreneur. One of the things that coach always often quotes is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People don't work with you just because of a company you work with. They work with you because they want to know that you care about what they're concerned about. And I think that's important, even as you're working as an entrepreneur, right? We see in this environment where everyone was like, buy this product, do this, do that, because everyone is in a space where they're trying to live outside of working on a job and doing the work that they are enjoying. Or sometimes we have to be mindful that we're not doing the job because it's going to make me all this money, right? Because a lot of times that's our focus, when it should be people. And I'm going to stop there. Entrepreneurship. Okay. Okay, let me read this comment right here. Entrepreneurs must focus to get the proverbial ball rolling. Right during this time, there is no such thing as balance. Yeah, the law of inner. I can say the word, Miss Dr. Lisa.
Inertia.
Okay, ensures it to be so. Once the ball gets rolling, we can get started, get some semblance of balance, but it is still unbalanced. Once we achieve momentum, we can now have less focus according to the same law. And so I think that's so true because I had to learn. You had to come into it, and you have to learn what you're doing. You have to learn it because if you don't, there's some mistakes I made in the beginning because then I had someone who I thought could mentor me, but a lot of the things that I did them on my own because guess what? The people's like, well, this is a competition. I'm not trying to help you. This is what they will say to me in the environment that I was in. We're in competition. Well, for me, I thought, well, we're working together, and you're part of my client base as well. That's how I thought about it, and it didn't change because of what someone else was thinking about it. I have to treat people how I want to be treated. But in the beginning, it was, you know, a lot.
Well, I think because and I saw Crystal put that it's scary to transition. Especially when you think about entrepreneurship. I think that's why I wasn't interested because it seemed like it was just too much. I was just like, that's a lot. I don't want to do all that. But I think if you go into any kind of transition, and I think Coach was saying something about this where it seems so huge because you take in all of this information that you've been getting. But the reality is, and why it can't be balanced in the beginning, is because there's no guaranteed return. When you're going into entrepreneurship, you don't really know how this is going to roll out. You are really working on faith, and you are just moving in your purpose, and you have to be okay. I'll give an example. When I started my online magazine, I couldn't go into that thinking that, oh my gosh, if 100 people are watching this and then I failed. I really did walk into it with the limit of, if just one person reads this magazine, I have succeeded. And that's all I needed, because it was serving a purpose of sharing information, showing people that they could live out their dreams. That was my purpose. So if I was doing that, I really couldn't put the ownership on how many people would look at it, how many people would respond, because that's where you lose. You trying to do all of that, and that really has nothing to do with you. Just do what you are supposed to be doing. And I think a lot of people, and I wanted to mention that with Crystal, if you, for instance, what was easiest for me, when I started to get into entrepreneurship, I went all the way back to when I was younger. And what are the things that I love to do? Well, as a mom and a single mom at the time, I love to create. I really am a creative at heart. And I tapped into the fact that, okay, everybody, as a single mom, I couldn't go out there and buy the borders. Back in the day, borders were expensive in your children's room. So I was like, okay, let me go get some stencil. I love coloring. I mean, it seems simple in the beginning, but I started to create the own letters and do them my own way, and created things. And I tapped back into that and realized, okay, Lisa, you are creative. So what are the things you love to do? I love to make the wreaths and pillows, and it just expanded once I tapped in. So it seems overwhelming until you think about what it is that you love to do when you were younger, and then it starts to flow. I can't really explain how fast it happened, but it was kind of like when I tapped into that I am a creative. I love to paint and do all those kind of things, but it transitioned. I don't paint necessarily, but it was that crafty part of me that I tapped into. And then from there, I moved into a space where I just tried something. I didn't even think about selling it. I made it for myself. So even with crafting, think about it. I'm just using crafting as an example. I decided, because I love burlap, that I wanted a burlap. I wanted all my ornaments to be a burlap on my Christmas tree. That's what I wanted. So I said, go out on YouTube, teach yourself because you are creative. And I taught myself. And the only thing I did was share what I had done. And from there, that's what happened. So I think sometimes if you tap into something and create it for yourself and then share your gifts, then it will come back. And that's kind of how I wanted to kind of talk to what Crystal said. And that way it doesn't seem so difficult because you really are holding on to the gifts. You already have the gifts. You just haven't tapped into what those gifts are. So it seems hard, but they're already there for you.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, Dr. Lisa. I know for me, I'm a little bit of a creative too, but I love the health and beauty space. And I'm always, as you were kids, you would be in the bathroom making up your own potions and stuff. I'm still kind of doing that kind of thing. And so even like being on TikTok and finding out how to make like my own dupe of body scrub. And like next thing I know, I got like 6 jars of body scrub. And I'm like, here, try this, here, try this, here, try this. Never even thought about spending it. I'm sorry, selling it. But at the time, all I kept thinking to myself is, and there's a popular book out, I think the title is something like Just Jump. And just trying to jump into those fields that that those are God-given gifts. And again, keep it in prayer and he will work out the rest. Now, I know there's ways to kind of structure it entrepreneurially, but if you are in fear, especially if it's that crippling fear, right? It just making that first jump, right? And trusting that God will work out the rest, even if that's not even the plan, even if that is the road to make the right to turn to the real plan, or even if you have to make a couple of rights and lefts, just making that jump into that transitioning into figuring out what your gifts are, to me is the first thing that overcame my fear, even in this space, like the casting space, and being with panels and stuff like that, allowed me to just jump off to kind of even do my own. So it's just having that fear of, okay, God, I trust you. I'm gonna jump, and you gonna figure out the rest. Even if you have to fall and hurt your tush, you got to keep going. You got to jump.
I want to add one more comment to this. Thank you so much for Dr. Lisa. And then this comment came up. Thank you for these tips. It came up on my algorithm, and I believe I needed to hear this while I'm in the process of branding. Please continue doing this. So that always, brings me joy in understanding that we're sharing something that's beneficial and can help other people to be mindful of, right? And one of the other things I thought about when Crystal said, the fear, right? In entrepreneurship, I begin to compare it with careers, right? We go to college, that's a process, that's a lot, right? We learn our craft, we get a job, we begin to learn it, we begin to understand it. And I think the only thing is the net of being in that company. That is what we feel confident in, right? And so we can, if we continue to talk about this and understand it, and I love, what you guys are saying pertaining to beginning to do things and understanding that it could be a business. You're just sharing it with people and it becomes a business. There's a young lady who started a soap company. It became $1 million business for her and her family, natural soap. So there's so many giftings within us that can be beneficial for us and for our future that we don't want to we want to consider. We don't want to just dismiss them. So thank you guys so much for this conversation. I have really enjoyed it, and we did not get to all of the questions, right? But we can have more conversations like this because, like the young man said, we have to continue to have these conversations. People need to hear them. And so I so appreciate that, him even making the comment. So thank you so much. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and we're gonna go into our final thoughts. If Dr. Lisa, Adrian, then myself, and then we will close out. And thank you guys so much for everyone in the chat. This your contributions always help us to have a more informative conversation in our podcast. And we thank you because your perspective helps us to even add or think about other things as we're having these conversations. So thank you so much.
So look, Lisa actually started my my closure was actually that this has really encouraged me. I'm in the actually to what the young man said. I'm kind of doing a rebranding myself, and I'm transitioning at the same time, but I'm taking it slow, so I'm not putting too much pressure on myself. That's one thing I would say. But I have enjoyed this conversation because I think I do agree with Lisa that this is a conversation that has to continue to be had. Transition is happening every day. Change is going to happen, and it's a good thing, but we have to be prepared for it. We have to be prepared for the rejections, for what some people consider failures. I think it's all growth. If it's either a lesson or a blessing. So this has blessed me in a wonderful way. It's reminded me of things that I need to do to stay the course. And I'm actually looking forward to the transition. So it's not as scary as it used to be, but it's because I know that I can move at my own pace. I can take steps forward. I can take steps backward. I can step over to the side. So there's some transition effects and flexibility in this. So just keep that in mind, that you can be flexible. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And I would love to continue these conversations, because I just think in life we're transitioning, and not just career, job, whatever, but just in family, with your children as you become empty nesters. There's so many areas of transition. So I thank you for the conversation. The chat has been on fire. Thank you all so much, because I am learning as I'm sharing. So what I suggest to people is just to work on tapping into those gifts. You already have them. He's given them to you. It's just your time to tap into them and see what they're supposed to do for you. And it's for sharing. So once you tap in, just share it and see what happens.
Yes, thank you so much. This has really been a good conversation. And, I've said before, something that I never really considered at any point in my life is entrepreneurship or using your gifts to transition your career. But you have to start somewhere. So whether you're young or whether you're old, and no matter, it's never too late. As Coach says, give time. If you feel that crippling fear, because I've lived in that mindset for so long, it is definitely a time to change it. And the only way to step out of that is just, again, to jump, to start to do something, to start to explore what it is that the Lord has put in you, and the gifts and the talents that you have that will transition you into your own area. Thinking on those good things will also break that fear. Philippians 4, I believe it is that when it talks about changing your mindset, and Philippians gives us the how to, right? What we need to focus on. So in this unprecedented time, and this very unsure time, be okay with opening your mindset to doing something so different. And I promise you that the Most High will walk with you every step of the way. Nothing is off limits. There is nothing that I'm not willing to explore at this point in my life, that I understand that the gifts and the talents that he's given me are within me. So with that, thank you, chat, by the way. I love some of the questions. I was able to kind of glance over a few times and see some of the comments that were made. This was very innovative and thought-provoking, and hopefully it has sparked someone to take something that they have thought about doing, wanted to do, break outside of the box, and remember who you are and remember whose you are, and you cannot go wrong. And with that, thank you so much. I love you with the love of Christ, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Navigating career changes. There are so many things that we have to consider. So I'm so thankful that we had this discussion, because it's important. And I know there are a lot of people in this space who may be now having to consider that. So I just want to encourage you to get with someone. If you are having to make a career change, speak to someone. Maybe speak to a counselor or a professional, sorry, who can help you understand what is your next role in life, right? But it doesn't mean that it changes, right? It doesn't mean you stop. It means you keep going, and you keep believing, and you keep recreating yourself if you have to. right? So I know that sometimes, transitioning or navigating to a new career or just changing even your workspace can be a little bit, unsettling. Yet we have a community where we can come together, we can talk to each other, and we can make sure that we are giving each other the advice so we can continue to do things and we can be encouraged in the process. So it takes us to work together to do it. So I so appreciate it. You can add all the ladies back onto the screen. I so appreciate these conversations because as a community, we work together. And you can see even in the chats, the people who have come in and commented, all of those mindsets coming together. How can we not be successful? There's something that we can do, that we can help each other to continue to be innovative and continue to grow and continue to learn and to cast out that fear that may arise. So thank you guys so much for this conversation. I've enjoyed it, but until next time, episode 9, you guys have to stay connected with us. You can follow us on social media, YouTube channels, TikTok. We're across every social media platform. And our next coming up, we have our TikTok live on Sunday morning. And yeah, don't forget to join us for Sunday brunch. That's at 11. I was getting ready to mention that at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on TikTok. And the Mindset Coach will be hosting this TikTok. So there's a group of us to do it weekly. So come in and join the conversation. You will not be disappointed. Our goal is to always grow and to elevate. And so thank you again. Please join us for 11:30. That was Miss Crystal. I'm sorry, I said the mindset, but the Mindset Coach will be hosting. So if you can find him on TikTok, follow him. You will get notifications when they go live. And until next time, we will see you guys. Okay.